Well, here we are back. This is Dr. J. Smith, and as you can see, I've got someone new over here. This is Thomas Alexander from Germany. Thomas, this is the first time we've ever had you on Fander Films, is it not?
Yeah. Hi, Jay. Thanks. I'm glad to be here.
Well, listen, Thomas, what I want you to do, this is a new thing we've been doing. For those of you who've been following through Fander Films, we've been bringing all kinds of different men from different countries. Mel, you all know Mel from Ireland. He is the first that I brought on board. Robert Spencer, I brought on board over a year ago from America. I've also had Murad. Murad has been around for a number of years now from the Middle East. And then more recently, I've been bringing people like Joe from Red Judaism and also Paul from London. And then most recently, you've all been enjoying Odon Lafontaine from France. And we've heard the French school, we've heard the Irish school, we've heard the English school, and we've also heard the Middle Eastern one, but we've not heard the German school. And it's the German school that I've been waiting to talk to and find out about. But the problem with the German school is I don't speak German. And I assume that most of you who are listening don't speak German as well. But Thomas is German. On top of that, he speaks fluent English. And what has been interesting about Thomas, he is one of those that I came to know because of the comments. The comments. I mean, we've always been saying, write comments. Reflect on what we're saying. Get back to us. Confront us. Agree with us, dispute with us, whatever way you do that. We read the comments. I do want to hear the comments because that's how we get peer reviewed. And Thomas has been doing that under a different name, but Thomas not really confronted. He was supporting some of the things I said. And the more I got to read his material, I said, hold on a minute, this guy really knows an awful lot and seems to be coming from a rich background. So I put out my feeler to him and I said, listen, whoever you are, I'd love to get to know you. I know that that's not your real name. People very rarely use their real name on the internet. But I said, here's my email. Come and contact me. And so he did. And here he is. Thomas from Germany has now contacted me. And what is fascinating about Thomas is that he knows the Inara school. And I'm going to ask Thomas to go and introduce himself, but also explain who the Inara school is and what is it about the German school that is different than, say, the French or the British or the American or the Middle Eastern school concerning the historical critique, because this is all to do with the historical critique. We're critiquing both Muhammad, we're critiquing the Qur'an, we're critiquing the origins of Islam in the 7th and 8th up until the 9th century. And he is going to bring you an entirely new way of looking at things. I've gone already through some of these videos with Thomas, so I know where he's going to go with it. And I'm excited because he's going to introduce some new ideas that none of you, or maybe I should say that the majority of you have never heard before. Certainly not on this channel. And so without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Thomas. Hello, Thomas. Give us something about yourself. Give us a little bit of your background. And then can you unpack the Inara school and can you start introducing us to some of the main players in Germany, some of whose names we may know, but what they did and what they their work and what they have found, we don't know. Over to you. God bless you. Thanks for coming on board.
Yeah, thanks. Glad to be here. My name is Thomas, and my background is actually not in history or religion, but in computer science. But I've always been a history nerd. So, and roughly 20 years ago, I really started getting into history of religion in general. And at first, I wasn't particularly interested in Islam, but then, let's say 15 years ago, roughly 15 years ago, I stumbled upon a radio program which had Karl-Heinz Ohlig as a guest. He's one of the main figures of this Inara school you talked about. And he introduced me to some completely new ideas that I hadn't heard before. And that was sort of the trigger that led me down to into this rabbit hole. So I read up a lot on this topic. I really got involved, and I guess part of my personality and also my training is understanding and recognizing patterns, like in all kinds of data, And that's sort of what I did with
this is the man you're talking about, right?
Exactly. So he published this book.
Oleg, who wrote this book, he was an editor for this book.
He was editor of this book, and this is a book published by this Inara group. And they've published, I think, 7 or 8 books by now, all like this one, but only the first one, the one you're holding right now here, is translated into English. All the others are only in German.
This is it. This is all we know about that whole school that's going on there in Germany. So thank you for actually, you're going to unpack some of what's in here, but you're also going to be showing us new stuff that is not in there that we need to hear about, because there in Germany, you have a whole different branch of instruction. So could you just explain what Inara is?
It's an Arab word that basically means enlightenment. And that's what the group has called itself. They are located in Saarbrücken in Germany, or at least that's the core of them are located there. It's sort of a loose group that they are all over the place, but the core of the group is in Saarbrücken in Germany. And they are basically building upon a long tradition in Germany of historical criticism. And I'm here today to introduce you to some of the main players, as you said, and then later on we'll see where that leads us and what they found out.
Well, listen, so the Anada school, enlightenment is what it means. Yeah. It's the Arabic word, but you're saying that they are in Western Germany. Saarbrücken is a city. So this school, these are what we would term the German revisionist school. Am I correct on that?
Well, we could call them that, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, yeah.
Well, listen, they go way far back. They're not rather recent. They're not as more recent as those who are Carl Zeiss, Oleg, and others. You're going to go and unpack a little bit about the German school.
Exactly. And I'm not just looking at German scholars, but I'm looking basically at the history that this in our group is building upon, which is mainly located in Germany, but also includes others. And I think with that, we could go right into my presentation.
Okay.
So we're going to look into the origins of Islam. And first, we're going to look at the Quran, and particularly the critical Quran studies and the history thereof. But first of all, why even do this? Like, why even engage in historical critical studies? So let's first start with some facts about the Quran. So what we do know is that the early manuscripts of the Quran were written in what's called defective script, or in Latin, it's scriptio defectiva. And what it means is that there are no vowel markings or diacritics. So that means of the 28 consonants in the Arab alphabet, only 7 are unique. The remaining signs can refer to from 2 up to 5 different consonants. So it means that we can't really distinguish between letters like F and Q, J and K, S and D, S and Sh, R and Z, D and Da, T and Z, and so on and so forth. We also have vastly differing styles within the Quran. And we have also 3 different words for God in the Quran, like Allah, Rab, and Rahman, which indicates 3 schools of scribes. In many cases, a large number of short verses in the Quran are followed by one massive verse. So that's a good sign for an interpolation. Because if you think about it, at a point in time where the number of the verses was already established, if you want to add something, what you had to do was to blow up a single verse, basically, to not change the order of anything. So that's why we find those occasionally. So for example, Surah 74:31 is one such case where we have lots of small verses and then all of a sudden a really long one. So all of these are just like some surface level observations, but they already show us that there's definitely reason to look deeper into this, that there must be more than one author, for example. And so that's what people did. Yeah.
This sounds similar to the biblical studies, the Hebrew biblical studies, and the documentary hypothesis that we've had from the 1800s coming out of Germany as well. So the similar problem exists with the Quran, you're saying.
Exactly, and that's also where the people came originally from, who started this whole endeavor of analyzing the Quran. So they the first ones basically came from this biblical historical study, and then they figured, well, let's have a look at the Quran. Like nobody's done that before. Let's see what we find. Yeah.
Just for those who are new to what you're saying, let me just unpack a little bit of what you're saying so we don't go too fast on this. If you have a script that is defective, it's not that doesn't mean necessarily it's defective. It just it is not readable, is what he's saying.
That's the technical term. Yeah. So what it means is basically so the Arab language basically, or in the Arab written language, you need to have those diacritical marks and the vowel signs to properly make sense of a word. If you don't have it, there could be countless of words written or hidden in there. So that's what's called a razm in Arabic. So that's a couple of letters without those diacritical marks, and there can be many different words in there depending on how you put those signs. And the early Quran manuscripts, they don't have those signs.
Yeah, and of course the diacritical marks we're talking about are the dots above or below the line. There are 5 dots that have been added since the 7th century and the 8th century. We don't even know exactly when they were canonized and became formalized. Some people say 8th, some say 9th, others even I've heard say 10. But 3 dots above. 1 dot would be the na, or the N letter. 2 dots would be the T letter. 3 dots would be the TH letter. Th, as we know it. 1 dot below would be the B letter, and then 2 dots would be the ya. So na, ta, tha, ba, ya. So those 5 dots, and also the vowels. There were no vowels at the very beginning either. No dama, kasra, fata. If you look at this, you're showing a picture of the Birmingham folio there. That's the 2 folios there. You can see there are no dots there, and there are no vowelizations that you're showing on that. So there's an example of the scriptio defecta, as you call it.
Exactly. So that's a technical term. It doesn't mean, as you said, it doesn't mean that the language is defective or anything. It's just this particular way of writing is called scriptio defectiva because you can't really interpret it without the dots.
Dots were needed so they knew what they were reading. And of course, once if you have just 3 letters, 3 bowl-shaped letters, which and you put dots above it, you can get 19 different words. Some Al-Fadi, my colleague, says you can get as many as 33 different words just by putting the dots in different places. And that's his native tongue. Okay, the other thing you're talking about is that since there are different names, just say for God, Allah, Rab, or Rahman, it could be completely different writers, is what you're assuming and what you're inferring. Am I correct? So there could be different writers, suggesting, therefore, that it was not from heaven or sent down to a man named Muhammad, that these are different. These are really different authors. So you're implying that there's different authorship.
Exactly. So in different places in the Quran, different words for God are used. So that really implies that the writers, or whoever wrote it, used that word, so it must have been different writers.
So already you're implying that this is not eternal, that this does not come from Muhammad, or that this is not coming in from Uthman. You're saying that these are written at a later date by different authors. This is going to confront the standard Islamic narrative enormously right there. So you we're just getting started with you, Thomas, and you're already shutting down any notion that this book could have come from or is eternal. That's in chapter 85, verse 22 of the Quran. Or that it cannot be changed. That's in chapter 10, verse 15, and chapter 18, verse 27, or that it's protected by Allah himself. And that's in chapter 15, verse 9. So you're really confronting what almost 99% of all Muslims believe right there in just your first 5 minutes.
I guess so, yeah. I mean, I'm at this point, I'm not drawing any conclusions yet, but I mean, the facts speak for themselves.
Okay. You're not coming to conclusion, you're just putting it out there. That's fine.
Exactly.
Okay.
So we will get to conclusions.
You have come to a conclusion right there at the very bottom. Clearly more than one author. So
yeah, true.
That's a conclusion.
Yeah, that is one.
And author,
there will be more.
It's not from God.
Yeah.
Ooh, those are big ones. Okay, thank you. I just want to make sure that everybody's following what you're saying, because there's an awful lot you have said in just your first 5 minutes that Muslims will take umbrage with. But that's why we're here. We're here to actually ask these kind of questions, and they may be damaging, but they need to be asked.